Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and there's nothing I enjoy more on L'Chaim than introducing you to the outstanding and lovely men and women on the world Jewish scene who are making amazing, creative, substantive contributions to Jewish life today. And no one has done more to elevate the Jewish soul in prayer, in song, in joy, than my very special guest who's joining us yet again. It's my enormous pleasure to welcome Cantor Joseph Malovany, the Chazan at the renowned Fifth Avenue Synagogue in New York City, one of the preeminent Orthodox synagogues in America. And Yossi Malovany has been gracing the Fifth Avenue Synagogue pulpit for virtually 40 years. You should also know that Joseph Malovany is the distinguished professor of liturgical music at Yeshiva University School of Jewish Music in New York. And in 2004, Joseph Malovany became the first cantor in history to be awarded Poland's Legion of Honor, which is like becoming a knight, for his musical contribution worldwide. And Yossi Malovany, it's such a pleasure to have you back. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.
It is always a joy to be in your presence and to share
very much.
Music and mind with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you
you very much.
You know, there are people who actually may not have yet heard you sing. And the reason I say that is, for the past 40 years, very often when the Jewish community has an event of significance, they reach out to you, and you represent Chazanut at the event, whether it's to sing Hatikva or the national anthem or to sing anything of a Jewish soul. So many, many, many people have heard you sing throughout your career. But many people still know little about you. And I want to talk about you first, then we'll talk about music. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. You're born in Tel Aviv?
Yes.
Okay. And what about your parents? Where were they from?
My late father was from a little town called Pultusk, which is 60 kilometers from Warsaw. And my mother was from a little town today in Romania, in Sighet. Today it's Romania, Transylvania. And as young Zionists, they met in Tel Aviv.
That's amazing. But many people know, but we should remind them, Sighet is also the town from which Elie Wiesel comes.
Absolutely so.
Yes.
Absolutely. And Elie and I are very close friends.
Yes, you are.
He's a member at my congregation, and we have adopted each other as brothers, so to speak. We talk to each other all the time. So Sighet is very, very important.
Yes. So your parents meet in Free State Palestine?
Yes.
Okay. And they're there when the State of Israel comes into being?
Of course.
Okay. And you're born in Tel Aviv?
Yes.
And what was your life like as a child in their home? What was, if we could have peeked into the Malovany home, what was it like Jewishly?
Mark, I come from Tel Aviv. I grew up in a street called Yonah Hanavi Street, which is near the beach.
Jonah the prophet.
Jonah the prophet, that's right. And my father struggled, was a tough life. In addition to trying to make some kind of living, he was very much involved in the Haganah, in the pre-state forces of the Jewish, very much so. He sneaked into Europe during the Holocaust, during the terrible time into Poland, working on the illegal immigration. Then he came back, of course, and I was born, and after that my brother, and after that my sister, and we lived in a 1.5 room in Tel Aviv, and nobody complained. When we moved to another place called Yad Eliyahu, we moved into 2 rooms apartment. It was a big luxury. Life was hard, but my parents made up their minds that education is the name of the game, so to speak. When it was discovered that I was musical, my mother sold her wedding ring so that they could buy a piano into this tiny little apartment.
Wow.
So that I could assume studying the piano at the Conservatory of Music in Tel Aviv.
When was this, Yossi? Roughly, how old were you?
I started the piano when I was 6.5. I remember exactly when I was 6.5. Later on,
did you love it
I
right
loved
away?
it. I still love it very much. I practice the piano every day for an hour. I sit at home and I play sonata by Beethoven or by Brahms or something from Bach or whatever.
And they knew you had a musical gift even as a child.
They could tell, and in order to satisfy their curiosity, they were not musicians, they took me for a test to the Conservatory of Music in Tel Aviv. And after, I don't know how long, I don't remember. I remember a little bit, they said to my parents, he's very talented and he would sin if you wouldn't give him some musical education. So music at home was very important. We sang on Shabbat, Zmirot, all the beautiful melodies, table melodies.
Really?
Every Shabbat.
Remember one for me. Do a little.
I remember, for example, I'll give you two.
Give
if
me
you
two.
want.
Give me two.
One for my mother and one for my father.
Let me hear.
My mother sang a Friday night Zemer without words, which her father, which my grandfather in Siget, used to sing, and I sing it every Friday night at home. And it goes like this. Ya bye 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 bye. Ya bye 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 bye. Ya ba 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 bye bye bye. Ya da 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 bye da da. Ya da 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 da. Ya ba 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 bye bye bye, and so on and so forth. Without words, full of neshama, full of getting closer to God. Dveikut, getting close to God. My father, for example, came from a family that was not Hasidic. They were mitnagdim. They were those who opposed Hasidism. Yes. Nevertheless,
it was an intermarriage of sorts.
Very much so. And my father came with also beautiful melodies, and I told him, it's impossible that it's not Hasidic. Oh yes, my father, in other words, my grandfather, on my father's side, yes, he went to a Rebbe of mitnagdim. And when he told me that he went to the Radzemini Rebbe, who lived between Warsaw and Pultusk, where my father came from, I said to my father, he was a Chassidish Rebbe. No, he insisted he was a Rebbe of Mitnagdim. And the melody that, quite known, bye, 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 bye. Ay, ay, da 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 da, ya bye 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 da da, ay 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 ay, bye bye bye, ay da da da, ay da da, bye 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 bye, and it goes on.
By the way, it has such neshama, such soul. And if I did not know, I would assume they were both Hasidic nigunim.
Absolutely. I think that what my father claims that it was a misnagdish nigun is really incorrect.
Right.
But
now,
regardless,
do you do both of those every Shabbat?
I sing that every Friday night and some other nigunim.
At your table?
Absolutely.
And
doesn't matter. I can have the Prime Minister of Israel, which I did. I had Yitzhak Rabin at my home. I had Menachem Begin at my home. And Friday night, we sang the same Zmiras. And I remember I said to Yitzhak, whether you know it or not, sing it. That's okay.
He had a very, very deep voice.
Yeah, he had a very, very deep voice. Not terribly musical.
No.
Sometimes sang a little bit out of tune. But
he join in, or did he just listen?
He did.
He
tried very hard.
That's a tribute to you, Yossi.
He tried very much. You're talking about Eli Wiesel. We once had the Minister of Finance. I remember Yitzhak Modai and Eli and Marion were at our home also for actually that was a Shabbat lunch. And Eli sings so beautifully. So
Yes,
we
he
sang
does.
and
Yes.
sang and sang, and Yitzhak Modai sang.
Oh, I'm
and
jealous.
It was wonderful.
Next time you do this, you have to make sure I'm there.
Okay, you got yourself a deal.
Okay. But we're
Yes.
skipping for one moment.
Yes.
Describe the table you now have. Who's your family now?
I have, of course, my wife.
Yes.
I have
And your wife's name?
Beatrice.
Beatrice.
I have my older son, Zevi, who lives in England. So he doesn't like to come to New York, so we visit him more often in England. And we have our younger son, Ellis. And with Ellis, we have 3 grandchildren.
Mazal tov.
We have Sophia, Arya, and Naftali. Now, Sophia, her Hebrew name is Frida. She's named after my mother. Naftali is named after my father. So once upon a time, Frida and Naftali were husband and wife.
Yes.
Today they're brother and sister.
That's lovely.
And Arya, the second one, is named after my wife's late father.
And look, we're older. Our children grow up. They
Of
have a life
course.
of their own, and we're
Of course.
thrilled about that. So how often do you have real family around your table on
Very
Shabbat?
often. Very often. We insist on the children coming to us, the grandchildren especially, and they learn to sing and they are musical,
what
the
I'm saying.
children.
Are they?
Very much so.
And,
All 3
and
of
they
them.
learn these melodies as
Oh,
well.
yes, sure. They sing it. And the other melodies, then they bring songs which they get from school. And
Yes. And the reason why I
Yes.
point this out is,
yes,
you know, there is a pattern within American Jewish life where even families that do celebrate Shabbat every Friday night, sometimes they don't include Zmirot. They don't sing. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. First of all, the idea of Zmirot in Jewish philosophy and Jewish liturgy is quite old. The table where we eat is like the Mizbeach, like the
altar.
sacrifice, like the
Yes.
altar. The singing around the table is what the Levites sang when the sacrifices were done on Shabbat or during the week in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. And so to remember that life, that notion of Jewish life, that aspect of Jewish life, the way to remember is to have a beautiful Shabbat dinner and to sing
Yeah,
the
to sing,
Zmirot.
and to
So
sing.
I advocate and I always call on my colleagues to teach their congregations melodies to sing at the table. When we have, we always invite people from the shul to our home, or if we have a dinner, a shul dinner, we sing the Zmirot. And the public knows certain kinds of melodies that are
Yes,
sung today,
yes,
these
yes.
modern melodies. They call it pop Hasidic, which I don't think it's not pop and it's not Hasidic. It's some kind of a mishmash. It's not authentic and very little dveikut, very little clinging to God. I always bring in these old melodies because that keeps us together. That keeps the chain of hundreds of years of Jewish life through these beautiful songs.
You also have a philosophy of chazanut in the synagogue. The balance between how much does the cantor sing solo, and look, chazanut in our tradition has a long, powerful history. And there were times when congregants in any synagogue, whether it's Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, would go to a service to hear the equivalent of an opera. And yet at the same time, you're talking about what in essence has become congregational singing,
Yes.
where you are leading song as opposed to performing song. And you were one of the first to really try to make a shidduch between those two, to blend them. And I want you to express for one moment your philosophy. To what extent do you want, as a distinguished, extraordinarily accomplished solo cantor, to what extent do you want to sing solo? And to what extent do you want congregational participation in the midst of the liturgy and the prayer and the service that you lead?
Look, there is a lot to talk about. First of all, before we talk about the congregational singing and the cantorial singing, I just want to stress a point. And the point is that there is something which is called a nusach. These are the motifs of prayer motifs. Every prayer in the Siddur, in the prayer book, or the prayer book of Rosh Hashanah, the Machzor, has a particular musical motif by which one has to chant it. Now, this is something which is very old, very ancient. Some of the nuschaot, some of these nuschaot, we call them misinai. They were given to us many years ago. So that is imperative. Now, what is my job? My job is to take this nusach and to work on it, not to improve on it, but to enhance through improvisation, through some well-known compositions. But I realize that being a chazan who is at the synagogue every Shabbat, what you were talking about was those cantors who used to pray once a month in the synagogue. The Rosenblatts, the Quartins, the Sirotas, all these old cantors. Today, it's when you're a cantor, you are involved in the congregational life. And if you are not, you do not fulfill your obligation and your mission as a chazan, as a shliach tzibur, as a messenger of the congregation in prayer. And if you open the code of Jewish law, the Shulchan Aruch, the laws about a cantor, about shliach tzibur, are far more, with all due respect, much more than for a rabbi.
Absolutely. No disrespect is meant there.
God forbid.
That's
no, absolutely
that
not.
Is the
but this is the fact.
That is the fact.
Now, because I daven every Shabbat, if I would not sing melodies so that the congregation can participate, you know, people today are nervous. People today are not relaxed. People are concerned. People are worried. And it all comes to the synagogue. Now, if you go to the opera, you have there people who understand opera, people who understand only voice, people who love the music, people who couldn't care about it, and some people who hate it, but they come because they are snobs and they want to show that they are at the opera house. In the synagogue, you have everything. Those like this and like that and like this, and you have to try and satisfy everybody. In the opera, you know very well, you sing the Barber of Seville, this is the music, or you can do some interpretation. In the synagogue, it is far wider, and it's religious. And once upon a time, there was no radio, there was no television, so the only entertainment the Jews had was at the synagogue, to come and listen to this famous cantor. And they paid for tickets to hear him on a Shabbat, on a holiday. Today, it's a different story. I am a full-time cantor of my synagogue. I'm involved in every aspect of the life of the congregation. And so I have to sing with them melodies. I try to sing melodies which are based on that nusach, on those modes. There are not too many of them. There are, and I try to do it. Sometimes I break a little the rule and I sing another melody which is not necessarily part of the nusach, but very quickly I come to it. So I devised a system where I sing both cantorial, what we call cantorial recitative, that means a sort of verbal expression, with these melodies. And in that case, I sing more congregational singing, and then I stop. I sing for half a minute a beautiful exposition where I try to emphasize certain words in the text, which may be relevant either to the Sedra of the week or to the Haftarah of the week, or they may be relevant to current affairs, something that may have happened during the week, the past week before the Shabbat, or something that is about to happen during the week of after the Shabbat, and to emphasize it. Or if I have in the text of the prayer something that is similar to another prayer, where that prayer is sung differently because it has a different prayer mode, I try to borrow from one to the other and to make it relevant. So it should call to the attention of the congregation that, this is here and this is here, but he took from here and he added it here. Why? In other words, to be a cantor is not only the emotion. I am a teacher, I am an interpreter of the text through the music. And even more, the punctuation, the pronunciation, all these things, this is a huge, huge Torah. To be a true cantor, a true shaliach tzibur, a true exposer of nusach, and to be involved in it throughout the day. And also what I wanted to tell you, that the music of the prayers is, as I said before, is not only emotional, but it is intellectual. It is the emotion that meets intellect. And when emotion meets intellect at a certain point, and it hits each other, something happens. And that's what I strive to do.
You know, you've just heard an extraordinary description of what a chazan, a cantor, or shaliach tzibur, a representative of the congregation, a messenger of the congregation, which, as Joseph Malovany says, is really one of the most important things in the Jewish tradition. And there are very specific guidelines and rules about how one is a shaliach tzibur, but I have never heard anyone, and I've heard a lot of people, I have never heard anyone explain what goes into thoughtful, spiritual chazanut. I have never heard it said so beautifully. I want to come all the way back.
Yes.
Because we digressed.
Yes, we did.
We were talking about you as a child, 6.5 years old. All of a sudden, your parents in a 2-room apartment.
1.5.
But was at 6.5? You're still in the 1.5 building.
1.5 room.
But they find room for a piano for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're a child who has a certain musical gift. But at one point, it's more than a gift. And I don't know where in your own personal career, or personal education, better than career, whether it's in high school, whether it's, I want to know at what point.
I know what you are up to.
Does it really become a more serious, and you're going to have to devote your life to something because it's inside you? Describe that for us.
When, at the age of 6, when I started school, primary school, it was the Bet Sefer Bilu in Tel Aviv. Those who know Tel Aviv, on Rothschild Boulevard, 124 Rothschild Boulevard. That school has a beautiful synagogue. The synagogue was attached to each other. On Shabbat, the first half of the synagogue was occupied by children, and only the back were the parents, all facing, of course, the ark. Now, when I was 7.5, just before 8, I approached the teacher, the chazan, actually the children were the chazonim, There were no adults. Only on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and maybe the first day Pesach, first day Sukkot, we had a professional cantor, but otherwise there were always children. Shlomo Ravitz was one of the world's greatest cantors in the 1910s, 1920s, in Kharkov and in Riga, in all those Eastern European great cities. Then he made Aliyah and he came to Israel, and he was the cantor of the great synagogue in Tel Aviv. A friend of Bialik, Chaim Nachman Bialik, Israel's national poet. When he retired from the great synagogue, he was approached by the principal of the school who ran the synagogue, Chaim Mishori, to come and start teaching children the prayer. And it was at the age of 8 that I joined that choir. That was a choir of 40 boys, and it was called the Tel Aviv Vienna Boys Choir. It was the attraction of tourists who came to Israel to visit. At that time, certainly before the Six-Day War, Yerushalayim was very small and not very much going on. People used to go there for a day and come back to Tel Aviv, but Friday night was always at the Bilu synagogue. When I was 9, I already conducted Friday night Shabbat service, accompanied by 40 boys choir. And I had a beautiful soprano voice, something which I see in my grandson, Naftali. And I'm beginning now to teach him the prayers. Now, Shlomo Ravitz, who was a genius of cantors, devised a fantastic system of prayers, of cantorial prayers, where, number one, hardly any repetition of words, just get on. Nusach was perfect, and we moved on with the services with beautiful singing, beautiful singing. From time to time, we have concerts in Tel Aviv today of his music at the Mann Auditorium, accompanied by the Israel Philharmonic. If Ravitz would have heard his music sung, accompanied sung by cantors and choir, and with the Israel Philharmonic, he would love it. I just want to tell you an interesting anecdote. Some years ago, I was invited to Riga for the first time. You know, I am a lot in Eastern Europe. Maybe we'll get a chance to talk about it. And when I arrived in Riga, there was a press conference with me at the airport. And I made a point to the journalists, to the media, that Shlomo Ravitz, my teacher in Tel Aviv, brought the music, the cantorial music from here, from Riga, from Kharkov, from these places to Tel Aviv, and he taught us. And I think it is for the first time that I have the honor of bringing that music back to you here to Riga. I was for 4 days inundated with every television station, every radio station, every newspaper. Who was that Ravitz? Who was he? What did he do? And I kept telling them and singing for them. So for 4 days, the whole Latvia was busy only with one thing, cantorial music. Not European Union politics, not, I don't know, Lithuanian, Latvia, whatever, only cantorial music. The mayor of the city had a reception for me, and when I gave the concert at the Opera House with their own Philharmonic orchestra, of course I sang Ravitz's music too. They gave me a proclamation appointing me as the honorary chief cantor of Riga. By the way, a year before, I was appointed honorary chief cantor of Vilna, or Vilnius, which is the capital of Lithuania. So I have 2 proclamations from these 2 countries as being their honorary cantor, something which I'm very, very proud of, because that means that whilst these things were cut off because of the Holocaust and then the communism, and now that these countries are free, I moved in as quick as I could in order to bring it back.
Yossi, that's fabulous, just fabulous. Okay, I still want the rest of the journey.
So
You're
it was
you're 8 years
Bilu.
old. And
So it was Bilu, and equally at the same time, parallel to it, studying classical music.
Okay.
Playing the sonatinas of piano, Bach inventions, and preludes and fugues, and sonatas by Haydn's and by Mozart and everything.
Were you good at the piano?
Not bad at all.
Not bad, good.
Not bad. If you would have a piano here, I would show you. I played a couple of concertos with the student orchestra at the academy in Tel Aviv. So until I went to the army, I was studying the piano twice a week with the best teacher in Tel Aviv.
Okay.
And
And
then in the choir until my voice broke in Bilu. And you know, it breaks when you are about 13 after the bar mitzvah. It broke. I continued. Then I became the conductor of the choir, with Ravitz being the big teacher. At the age of 12, I conducted High Holidays choir, the choir. And so, I continued doing it until I got into the army. And when I was in the army, I finished the Academy of Music in piano, choral and orchestral conducting, and composition. And then, of course, I became a cantor in the army and a conductor of choirs in the army and everything.
So at what point do you leave Israel?
Once, there used to be, I remember, in the army radio, a program on Saturday night called B'Motzai Menucha, at the end of the Shabbat, of day of rest. And I performed there one day, and those years nobody had a telephone at home. So there was a knock at our home door, and a man comes, he speaks Yiddish, but you can hear that English was his mother tongue. And he knocks at the door, and my late father opens the door. At that time, he was much younger. He says, "I came to talk to you about." He says, "What is it about?" About coming to South Africa to be our cantor. He says, "You don't mean me, you mean my son." Anyway, I wasn't in. They waited and whatever, and they
Roughly
invited
how old
me.
are you here?
20.
Okay.
And they said to me, "Come to South Africa." So I said, "I cannot come now. I'm a soldier." But as soon as I finished, it was a matter of only of a few months. I went over to South Africa for the high holidays to prepare the choir and to daven and everything. And then I was going to go back. In fact, I was going to go to the United States to study. I was accepted to study at Juilliard.
Wow.
Further studies of orchestral conducting. And it was that point that I had to make up my mind. Where am I going? Am I moving into the world of classical music, remaining a Jew, remaining a traditional Jew, or am I moving into the world of Jewish music and utilizing this huge knowledge that I acquired at the Academy of Music for the music of the synagogue?
This became a conscious decision you had to make.
Absolutely.
And you remember this period of your life?
I remember it very well.
Okay.
And it was, I can tell you one thing, my late father wanted me to go to the United States and to further my classical music. My late mother said they want him in South Africa as a cantor, let him go there. And we'll see what happens. And I remember when I wrote to them that I like this idea of being a cantor, and I'm going to, as I said to you, to apply the knowledge into that. My father was not terribly happy about it. My mother was. Because he thought that I will become another Toscanini, another conductor, another Giulini, another Leonard Bernstein.
And you were giving that up by becoming a cantor?
Yes.
And your mother?
And my mother said to me, "Look, your davening is so beautiful. And you are so sincere, you're such a good boy. So you make your choice. But if you decide that you want to be a cantor, I'll support you." Mentally, of course. And so I opted for that. That doesn't mean to say that today, even today, when I have a concert accompanied by a full symphony orchestra, my own night with a symphony orchestra, I always conduct a classical piece just for my own pleasure. An overture, a symphony.
Like what?
Like what? The overture, Verdi's overture to La Forza del Destino. The overture to The Barber of Seville. This beautiful piece from La Traviata in between the acts. Beethoven Symphony, First Symphony, number
So
one.
you have an enormous appreciation for classical music.
Very much so. I am the first one at all the concerts in Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center to listen to the concert. I have befriended and I'm friends with many international most famous conductors.
And was
the
there
world.
ever a moment of regret that you did not make this, the world of classical music, your life?
Yes. I tell you, I love it very much. And as I told you before, whenever I have an opportunity, I raise my hand with a baton to conduct, to work with the orchestra first, to bring the things that I would love to do it. And yes, I love it very, very, very much. And sometimes I think, well, maybe if I would have moved into that, I would have been another famous orchestral conductor. And perhaps by the world knowing that I am a religious Jew, that will be another Kiddush Hashem, another sanctification of the name of God. Perhaps, I don't know. This is something that I don't know. But to tell you that I do not regret that will be incorrect. I do regret it, that I did not go into it. But I love what I do.
Yes, I understand.
It's my life, and I enjoy it, and it's all. I put all my heart, all my feelings, all my energy, all my knowledge, all my everything into the world of Jewish music.
Finish the journey. You're in South Africa. How do you end up in America? Do you ever study at Juilliard or no?
No.
How do you come to Fifth Avenue Synagogue?
I finished the academy in Tel Aviv.
Yes.
In South Africa, I was 4 years.
Yes.
Then I was invited to become the cantor of the Edgware Synagogue in London. This, in the Guinness Book of Records, this is the largest in the British Isles. And you know, for the British, that's very, very important. I was there 5 years. 5 years as the cantor of this huge synagogue. On Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when we opened the back doors because there was a hole at the back, we had 2,200 people, a sea of people, no microphone. It's an Orthodox shul. And so I used to give, it was tremendous. I remember when I stood at the ark with my face to the congregation with the Torah, when I was taking the Torah out, and I saw this huge crowd, all holding prayer books, over 2,000 people. It's unbelievable. What happens then was the chief rabbi of England was Rabbi Jacobowitz, Immanuel Jacobowitz.
Who had been at the Fifth Avenue Synagogue.
Who was the founding rabbi of the Fifth Avenue Synagogue.
Right. An extraordinary rabbi.
I adored that man. Yes. I learned so much from him. One day he calls and he says to me, you know, my daughter is getting married and I want you to sing at the chuppah.
Wow.
In the synagogue called St. John's Wood Synagogue in London. So I said, it's my honor, of course, obviously. I sang at the chuppah, a couple of brachot, maybe Baruch Haba, I don't even remember exactly what I sang. And then there was a reception at the Royal Festival Hall. And zillions of people. And Rabbi Jacobowitz said to me, Chief Rabbi Jacobowitz says to me, you know, there are some officers from the Fifth Avenue Synagogue who came to London to the wedding, and they are looking for you. So I asked him, what do they want? So he says, I don't know, but I hope, I'll never forget, I hope they are not going to steal you away from me. It was a whole evening and we never met because there were a lot of people there. But the following morning, I got a telephone call at our home from two gentlemen. One was Hermann Merkin, the other one was Henry Hirsch. They were on both lines, and one was the president, the other one was the chairman of the Fifth Avenue Synagogue. We heard you at the wedding, we have to talk to you. And tomorrow we are leaving back for New York, so tonight at 8 o'clock at the Churchill Hotel in London. I said, but tonight I'm busy, I have something else. Cancel it. You know, there used to be, so we canceled it. And we went over to the Churchill Hotel, and they said, look, we heard you. We are looking for a cantor. We've interviewed and we heard so many of them. We liked what we heard. We come fly in for a Shabbat. I remember that was February, come in right after Pesach for a Shabbat, and I came, and the rest is history.
They had to have you. That's very flattering.
It's God's will.
As we sit here together,
Yes.
you recently came back from Warsaw. By the way, you told us already that your parents basically came from
My father
near
from
Warsaw,
Poland.
near
my father,
Warsaw,
yes,
and your mother was from
from
Siget,
Siget.
so that was Transylvania, Romania. So that you have in you, your background is from that part of the world, from Eastern Europe.
Yes.
You're basically an Eastern European Jew who grew up in Israel
Right.
and now is in America. And you have been back to Eastern Europe, the Jewish communities of Eastern Europe, time and time again.
Yes.
And we've already talked about the fact that you were knighted in Poland, the equivalent of being knighted. But you came back from an anniversary of the uprising of the Warsaw Ghetto, correct?
Yes.
Tell us why you were there and what it was like.
I was there for the 70th anniversary of the uprising of the Warsaw Ghetto as the guest of the president and the mayor of Warsaw, the president of Poland and the mayor.
What
of
was going on to commemorate the 70th anniversary?
Well, the Polish government is very much anxious to do to get over their image that they had because of the Holocaust. And the Polish government is anxious to show, and it is true, factually, that there were a lot of Polish Gentiles who saved Jews. But I don't want to go into that now. But they create all kinds of events to express their feelings about it. And now it was the 70th anniversary, and so the Polish government decided that that has to be commemorated.
Okay, I want you to just think this through with me a little bit. You know,
Yes.
whenever I think of the Warsaw Ghetto, I think of it as, number one, a moment of incredible Jewish resistance.
Of course.
It is a heroic moment. I have little patience with those who say something like, why did the Jews go meekly to the slaughter? It shows extraordinary ignorance of history and the misunderstanding of human nature. But the reality also is that the Warsaw Ghetto may symbolize the kind of resistance that was existing in virtually every single concentration camp. And that, as Elie Wiesel likes to say, it took longer for the Nazis to destroy the Warsaw Ghetto than it took them to conquer all of France.
Of course.
But for me, the Warsaw Ghetto symbolizes the extent to which Poland betrayed the Jews who lived there. The Warsaw Ghetto was ultimately the final stop, either before people died in incredibly horrific situations in this very small ghetto community, or were deported to Auschwitz and other places where they were put to death. There's nothing about the Warsaw Ghetto that I want to share with Poland. I want it to be a Jewish moment that the Jewish people in some way memorialize. And when I heard that you were there and that it's ultimately Poland's attempt to remake their reputation, Yossi, something about it offends me. And I want to know, I wanted you to help me with that. I wanted to hear how you reacted to the same thing I'm describing and what insight you can bring to our audience about how do we look at modern Poland today when so much of Jewish history and experience in Poland was so very, very cruel and was a part of death and destruction.
The question that I am faced is always, suppose when I get the invitation to come and sing the Kel Maleh Rachamim, the memorial prayer for those who gave their lives at the Warsaw Ghetto, suppose I would not come to do it. Suppose it will be left just for the Polish, in the Polish language, to make speeches and to do whatever it is. The fact, to my opinion, that they say, no, we want a cantor to come and chant whichever prayer he deems right to do for his own brethren who gave their lives and fought the Germans. Because in the Warsaw Ghetto, it was really the Germans who fought the Jews, not really the Polish, because the Polish also had their resistance. And soon after that, they had their own uprising. So should I say, no, I'm not coming to do it? Number one. Number two, we know very well that when we Jews have a Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur to repent and to ask for forgiveness. We know that Germany has been trying very, very hard. And it started all with the Germans. We know that Germans, since Adenauer, they started with the reparations and all these things. But they really, when you talk to a lot of people, they even today, they still feel bad for what they did. Poland, until the end of communism, was not able to express it. Maybe if Poland would have been free, they would have been equal to the Germans. But they couldn't do it. As soon as they became free, they were interested in doing it. So I come there to pray, to remember my brethren. Should I not do that? I'm not coming here to say you are right or you are wrong. I'm here to pray. That's my mission. And I try to do it to the best of my ability. And when I open the newspaper, the daily newspaper, the Gazette, the following morning, and I see my picture with wearing the cantorial clothes, with a talit, with a siddur, with a prayer book in my hand, singing it, and I don't see there in that particular one, not the picture of the president, not of the prime minister who were there, and not the mayor, and not the speaker of the parliament, and not the speaker of the German Bundestag, but the chazan, the cantor who came in to pray, to cry. Then something is going on there. They are trying. The fact is that the European, they got into Europe. The relationship with Israel is outstanding. And they are an important country in the European. So we have also to be a little pragmatic too. And so, but whilst I'm not involved in the politics of it, but if I am asked to pray for my own brothers, I do it.
I'm very proud of you, and you say it beautifully. And by the way, I never meant to suggest that you shouldn't go.
No, of course. I believe you, of course.
I think it's extraordinary that you go. I want your voice there. If there's going to be any kind of commemoration, of course I want you there.
And I am there.
And of course I want the El Mole sung, and I want it sung by you.
Thank you.
And so that fills me with both awe and pride. And I was saying something slightly different. And again, even as you talk, though, you helped me. You know, you're correct that if there really is a generation now, whether it's in Poland, whether it's in Germany, right now we're seeing some horrible anti-Semitism in Hungary.
Of course.
But if there are places on this planet where the generation says, in the finest spirit of teshuvah, it was a horror what we did, and we are sorry, and we can't bring anybody back, but we want you to understand that we recognize what we did, and that from the depths of our being, we want to make some kind of restitution, whether it's emotional or financial. No, the Jew should be willing to say yes. I'm only saying to you that what bothered me, and it bothers me less now that I've heard you speak, what bothered me a little bit was, and I did not want it to be flippant. I want any country where ultimately its Jewish population was virtually exterminated. I want any country who does that to have extraordinary pain of soul when they have a commemoration. And so, it sounds like for you to open up that newspaper and see you are on the cover, and as you say, not any of the dignitaries, but the Jew, the Chazan in his talit and yarmulke and robe. Yes, you made an enormous contribution. And I want you to continue talking about what the emotion was like for you, but was it a celebration that you thought was in some way dignified for the Yakaleviches and all those who gave their life in the Warsaw Ghetto?
It was very dignified. The Minister of Education from Israel, Rabbi Shai Piron, represented the State of Israel. So that means that it's important for the State of Israel. And he happens to be a friend of mine, so that's okay. And so it was extremely dignified. In the radius of a quarter of a mile, I was told by the head of the police there were about 500,000 people standing, listening to the sounds, to the prayer, to the Jewish prayer. And the head of the police told me that a lot of people were crying. No, how many Jews do you have in Poland? So we are talking about non-Jews. We're talking about Gentiles. They were crying. So maybe something touched them. Maybe something will bring them into something. But I wanted to tell you something else in this edition. One day I got a telephone call from the previous president of Poland, Aleksander Kwaśniewski. And he said to me, you know what's going on in Jedwabne? Jedwabne is a village where 1,600 Jews were murdered. And there was a big argument. Was it done by the Poles or was it done by the Germans? Until a book was written, The Neighbors, and the author came to the conclusion that it was the Poles who did it, sanctioned by the Germans. And the president calls me up, he says, you know, we have erected a monument there for all the Jews. And I'm going to Jedwabne to ask forgiveness from the Jewish people. Can you come and be there with me to chant any prayer that you deem important? And I said to Mr. President, I will be there. And I went. And he took me in his own helicopter. And we landed just at the side of the monument. And for almost the whole day, he was begging forgiveness. I was singing prayers. What bothered me is not the Polish officialdom. The Polish officialdom and Polish intelligentsia was there. What bothers me a lot was that there were no representative of the top Catholic representatives. There was a local priest there. But to have, since the president came, I would have thought, and they were not there. I understood that there were issues, whatever it was raining, and I was caught a cold after that because I sang with, but we went there and we did it. And we did it, but when the president of the country asks forgiveness, what else can, well, as you said yourself, unfortunately we cannot bring them back. My grandmother is in Auschwitz. 2 of my uncles, 2 of my aunts with their children are somewhere. I don't even know where they are. From Pultusk, from where my father came from. My grandmother from Siget is in Auschwitz. So the question is a big question. So we try to do the best we can.
You are one of the outstanding figures in the Jewish world today.
Thank you.
It is not only because you're extraordinarily talented yourself. You have mind and you have heart and you have soul. That you have chosen to share it with all of us is a gift you give us every single day. I wish you kol tuva hatzlacha in everything you do, and I will stay with you all the time.
Thank you.
You are part of me, and I can't thank you enough for all this time that you've given me, and we will do wonderful things together.
Please God, and I thank you for inviting me. It's important that for me, for my family, when my grandchildren will see me on TV, to them it's very, very important.
Thank you.
And I thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
My conversation with Cantor Joseph Malovany of the Fifth Avenue Synagogue. Incidentally, you've experienced him now. He is an extraordinary human being and a Jew with incredible insight, and again, this extraordinary neshama. But he is also this wildly gifted voice, chazan, shliach tzibur, as we've discussed. And you can have Cantor Joseph Malovany, the chazan, in your home. He has DVDs, he has CDs, they're available, and many, many more. They're available in Jewish gift shops everywhere. They're available online. Do yourself a favor and have him in your home, whether it's on DVD or on CD. You'll be doing yourself a favor. And if you love someone, you send them as a gift a DVD, a CD of Cantor Joseph Malovany. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments, any reactions you have to my meeting with Cantor Joseph Malovany. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, tweet me. I look forward to hearing from many of you. And if you would like to be in touch yourself with Yossi Malovany, Cantor Joseph Malovany of the Fifth Avenue Synagogue, you can do so by emailing me, and I will forward your emails on to him. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub, L'chaim, my friends, to life.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive on DVD with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish Education in Media.